My children said, "This neighborhood is changing, Dad. It's time to sell." They said it over takeout containers of food I didn't recognize. The plastic forks felt flimsy in my hand, ready to snap. Michael, my son, used this to point out the window toward Mrs. Henderson's old place. "See," he said, "they put up one of those new-style houses. All gray boxes and sharp angles. Took them 6 months. Tore down the old clapboard in a day." Sarah, his wife, nodded in agreement. She was always nodding in agreement with him. She dabbed her mouth with a paper napkin. "It's about property values, Frank. Your equity. You're sitting on a gold mine. My name is not Frank. It's Arthur. 78 years I've been Arthur. 45 of them in this house. I built the back deck with my own hands. My wife, Helen, planted the rose bushes that still climb the trellis, even though she's been gone 10 years. I didn't correct him. I hadn't corrected him the last 3 times he called me Frank. Frank was my father. Michael knew that, but his mind was always moving so fast onto the next thing, the next deal, the next opportunity. Details like his own father's name seemed to get sanded off in the process. I just looked at the flimsy fork in my hand. I thought about the sterling silver in the dining room credenza. Helen's wedding silver. We used it every Sunday. She used to say that life was too short to save the good things for company that never comes. Michael and Sarah were company. They came twice a year. "The neighborhood is changing," Michael repeated, as if the idea had just occurred to him. "It's not as safe for you anymore. Dad's safe. I lived on this block since before Michael was born. I know the sound of every late-night car, the bark of every dog. I know that Mr. Gable down the street has a new grandson and that the widow Jenkins's arthritis is acting up again. We watch out for each other. That is a kind of safety my son, in his gated community 2 states away, will never understand. We've been looking at some places for you," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. The screen was offensively bright in the dim light of my dining room. "There's a wonderful facility called Golden Horizons. It's more of a community. They have activities, little bus trips." She swiped through pictures of beige hallways and smiling, silver-haired strangers. People playing bingo. A man in a wheelchair painting a ceramic bird. Golden Horizons. It sounded like a name for a chicken brand. I set my fork down. The food was cold anyway. It tasted of nothing. "I'm fine here," I said. The words felt heavy in my own mouth. Michael sighed. It was his signature sound. A long, put-upon exhalation that communicated my unreasonableness more effectively than any argument. He'd been using it on me since he was 16. "Dad, be realistic. The upkeep on this place alone. The lawn. The roof will need work soon. You can't be climbing ladders." I had patched the roof myself last autumn. I hadn't used a ladder. I had used the permanent, sturdy scaffolding I built on the north side of the house 30 years ago for just such a purpose. I built it from seasoned oak. It was more solid than the foundation of Michael's smart home. He didn't know that. He'd never asked. "I have a man for the lawn," I said. It was young Anthony from 2 blocks over. I paid him a fair wage, and he always stayed for a glass of iced tea. His grandfather and I used to play dominoes at the barber shop on Saturdays. "That's not the point," Sarah said, her voice gentle, but with an edge of steel. The kind of gentleness you use on a child or a simpleton. "The point is simplifying your life. We worry about you. All alone in this big house," they worried. Their worry arrived in the form of a biannual visit and quarterly phone calls that always seemed to happen when they were in the car, on their way to somewhere more important. Their worry was a line item on a checklist. Right between get oil changed and make dinner reservations, I looked past them through the archway into the living room. My chair, the leather one, sat beside the record player. Its arms were worn smooth from my hands, from Helen's hands. A stack of records was on the floor next to it. John Coltrane, Etta James, my father's old B. King album. Each groove in those records held a memory. Dancing with Helen in the kitchen with flour on her cheek. Rocking a feverish Michael to sleep to the sound of a slow blues guitar. This house wasn't a collection of assets and liabilities. It was a library of a life. My life. Michael scraped his chair back. The sound was ugly against the hardwood floors I had laid and finished myself. Look, we're not going to decide this tonight, but just think about it. Okay, Frank, we'll get an appraiser to come by, just to see. No commitment. He stood up, stretched. Sarah was already gathering the plastic containers, her movements efficient, sterile, tidying up, managing the situation. We have to get back to the hotel, she said. Early flight, I nodded. I walked them to the door. The air outside was cool, smelling of damp earth and the last of Mrs. Gable's night-blooming jasmine. It smelled like home. Michael gave me a quick, one-armed hug, a pat on the back. Take it easy, Dad. We'll call you from the airport. I knew he would forget. I closed the door behind them and leaned my forehead against the cool, solid wood. I felt the vibration of their car starting, the crunch of tires on the gravel of my driveway. Then silence. The silence was not empty. It was full. It was full of everything they hadn't said and everything I hadn't said back. It was full of the name Frank. I walked back to the dining room and gathered their trash. The flimsy forks, the paper napkins, the plastic boxes with the strange-smelling food. I put it all in one bag, tied it neatly, and took it out to the bin. I did not want the smell of their visit lingering in my house. Back inside, I went to the credenza. I opened a drawer and took out a fork from Helen's silver set. It was heavy in my hand, solid, real. I went into the kitchen, put the kettle on the stove, and measured out coffee grounds into the percolator. The old way, the slow way, the way that makes the whole house smell like morning, no matter what time of day it is. As the water began to heat, I stood at the sink and looked out the window into my backyard. The deck I built, the trellis I painted, the big oak tree that was just a sapling when we moved in. My son saw equity, a gold mine. I saw the place where I taught him to ride a bike, his small hands gripping the handlebars with terror and excitement. I saw the spot where Helen and I had our anniversary picnics. I saw the ghost of a tire swing hanging from a thick branch. The kettle began to hiss. The coffee began to bubble and send its dark, rich scent into the air. It was in that moment, standing in the quiet of my own kitchen, with the smell of real coffee filling the air and the weight of a silver fork in my pocket, that the hurt finally curdled. It didn't turn into anger. Not the hot, shouting kind. It turned into something cold and clear and hard. It turned into a decision. The neighborhood was changing, my son had said. He was right. It was, but I would be the one to decide how. I let the coffee percolate for a full 8 minutes. I poured a cup, black, and carried it into the living room. I didn't sit in my chair. Instead, I went to the old secretary desk in the corner. My father bought it for my mother after he got his first promotion at the plant. He'd told me stories about saving for it, $1 at a time. It was made of mahogany, and the wood glowed under the lamplight. I opened the roll top. The familiar scent of old paper and wood polish filled the air. I took out a sheet of heavy, cream-colored stationery and a fountain pen. My penmanship had always been a point of pride. In the Army, they said I wrote a clear, steady hand. I didn't write a letter. I made a list. The first item on the list was a name. Allison Chun, a lawyer. I met her through a church committee on estate planning for seniors a few years back. She was young, sharp, and didn't speak in platitudes. She spoke about wills and trusts and power of attorney with a clarity I appreciated. She gave me her card. I had kept it tucked into the back of my old address book. The second item was revoke power of attorney. I had signed that document 5 years ago after a small health scare. Michael had insisted. Just in case, Dad, he'd said. It just makes things easier for whom, I now wondered. The third item was bank. The fourth was will. I stared at the list. Each word was a stone being laid in the foundation of a new wall. A boundary. I finished my coffee. Then I went to the record player. I didn't put on a blues. I put on John Coltrane. A love supreme. It was music about transformation, about finding a different kind of faith. I sat in my leather chair, closed my eyes, and listened to all 4 parts. I did not fall asleep. I listened to every note. When the record finished, and the only sound was the gentle hiss and pop of the needle in the final groove, I felt steady. The tremble that had been living in my hands for the past year, a quiet tremor of age and uncertainty, was gone. My hands were still. The next morning, I woke before the sun. This was my habit. The world is quietest then. It is the best time to think. I made my coffee the same way I always do. I sat on the back deck I had built and watched the sky turn from bruised purple to pale gray. I thought about my father, Frank. He was a quiet man, too. He came up from Alabama during the Great Migration, with nothing but a cardboard suitcase and my mother's promise to follow. He worked at the Ford plant for 40 years. He saved. He sacrificed. He bought this land, this small piece of the world, so his family would have something that was theirs. A foundation. He never owned a home in Alabama. He was a sharecropper. The earth he worked belonged to someone else. The roof over his head was conditional. He told me once, "A man needs a place to stand that is his own. Everything else comes from that." Michael, with his talk of equity and property values, did not understand this. To him, this house was an asset to be liquidated. To my father, and to me, it was an anchor. It was the physical proof of a promise kept. At precisely 9 o'clock, I picked up the telephone. The receiver felt solid in my hand. I dialed the number for Allison Chen's office. A crisp voice answered. "Chun and Associates. I'd like to speak with Ms. Chun," I said. "My name is Arthur Murray. Is she expecting your call?" "No," I said, "but I believe she will take it." There was a pause. A click. Then Allison Chen's voice, clear and direct. "Mr. Murray, it's good to hear from you. How can I help?" "I need to make some changes," I said. "To my affairs, I see. Would you like to schedule an appointment?" "Yes," I said. "As soon as possible." I had an appointment for the following afternoon. After the call, I went to my workshop in the garage. The smell of sawdust and motor oil and old leather was the smell of my own history. My tools hung in their places on the pegboard, clean and sharp. My father's old lathe stood in the corner, covered in a canvas sheet. I had always intended to leave the tools to Michael. I had tried to teach him how to use them when he was a boy. I tried to show him the satisfaction of making something true and square with his own hands. But he had no patience for it. His hands were made for keyboards and screens. I took down a set of chisels, their wooden handles worn smooth and dark with age. I had thought I would pass them to my grandson, but I barely knew the boy. Michael and Sarah sent glossy school photos every year. A stranger in a blazer, smiling a professional smile. I laid the chisels on my workbench. I unwrapped a soft cloth and opened a can of polish. Slowly, methodically, I began to clean and oil each one. The repetitive motion was calming. It was a prayer. I was not thinking about Michael. I was not thinking about his son. I was thinking about the wood. I was thinking about the steel. I was honoring the tools themselves, the work they had done, the work they could still do. The phone rang in the house. I heard it through the open garage door. I knew it was Michael calling from the airport, remembering at the last minute. I let it ring. It stopped. A moment later, my cell phone, the one Sarah insisted I carry for emergencies, buzzed in my pocket. A new voicemail. I did not check it. I finished with the chisels and started on the hand planes. Each one had a story. The little block plane had shaped the runners of the cradle I built for Michael. The big jack plane had flattened the oak planks for our dining room table. These are not just tools. They were extensions of my will, my memory. My children saw a house full of old junk, a dusty workshop, a burden. They didn't see the grammar of my life written in wood and steel. That afternoon, I put on my good suit, the navy blue one I wore to church. I polished my best shoes, the leather ones with the broguing. Helen always said you could tell a man by his shoes. Allison Chen's office was in a new glass building downtown. The air inside smelled of carpet cleaner and money. It was sterile and quiet. She met me in the lobby herself. She was smaller than I remembered, but her handshake was firm. "Mr. Murray, thank you for coming in." Her office was neat. Books lined one wall. A single, elegant orchid sat on her desk. She didn't waste time with small talk. "You said you wanted to make changes," she began, opening a new legal pad. Her pen was a simple, black rollerball. No fancy fountain pen like mine. It looked efficient. I do, I said. I took the list from my pocket and laid it on her desk. She looked at it. Her expression did not change. She looked up at me. All right, let's start with the power of attorney. It's currently held by your son, Michael Murray. Is that correct? It is, and you wish to revoke it? Completely, I said, and I do not wish to appoint a new one at this time. I am a sound mind and body. I will make my own decisions, she made a note. Understood. We can file the revocation immediately. We will send a certified letter to your son informing him of the change. Good. Next. The bank. My son is a joint owner on my primary checking and savings accounts. I explained. It was set up for convenience. To help me pay bills, he said, I didn't tell her that in the last year I had noticed small, regular withdrawals. $100 here, $200 there. When I had asked Michael about it, he'd been dismissive. It's for your expenses, Dad. Lawn care, groceries, that stuff. It's easier if I just manage it. I knew what Anthony charged for the lawn. I knew what I spent on groceries. The numbers didn't add up. It wasn't the money. It was the dishonesty. The quiet theft disguised as help. I want to remove him, I said. I want to open new accounts in my name only. That's straightforward, she said. We can walk over to your bank after this meeting. As a joint owner, you can withdraw the full balance and close the accounts. Then you open new ones. Simple, simple. The word felt good. Clean. And the will, she said, her eyes on the last item on my list. Your current will leave the entirety of your estate, including your home, to your son. That will need to change, I said. Here, she paused. She put her pen down. Mr. Murray, may I ask what prompted this? It seems like a significant shift. I looked at her, at this young, sharp woman with her clear eyes. I decided to tell her the truth. Not the long, rambling story of a lifetime of small hurts, but the core of it. My son and his wife visited yesterday, I said. They want me to sell my home and move into an assisted living facility. They believe the neighborhood is changing. They refer to me by my father's name. Twice I said it plainly, without emotion, a statement of fact. Allison Chin's face remained professional, but something flickered in her eyes. A spark of understanding, of empathy. She didn't say, I'm sorry to hear that, or any other useless platitude. She just picked up her pen. All right, Arthur, she said, using my correct name. What do you want to do with the house? And there it was, the real question. I had thought about it all morning as I polished my tools. I had thought about it as I watched the sun rise. My father built a life here. I had built a life here. This house was more than my home. It was a piece of our community's history. It was one of the first houses on this street to be owned by a black family. It represented a dream of permanence, of belonging. That dream didn't belong in an equity report. It couldn't be liquidated. It had to be passed on. The neighborhood is changing, I said, echoing my son's words. He's right about that. New people are moving in. Prices are going up. People who have lived here for generations are being forced out. People like my neighbors. People who need a place to stand that is their own. I took a breath. I want to place my house in a trust. A trust, she repeated, writing. For whose benefit? For the community, I said. I want to create a trust that will own and maintain this house in perpetuity. Its purpose will be to provide affordable, stable housing for an elderly resident of this neighborhood, someone who might otherwise be displaced. I had seen it happen to Mr. and Mrs. Coleman down the street. Their children sold the house right out from under them to a developer. They were moved to a small apartment across town, far from their friends, their church, their lives. It broke them. I saw the light go out of Mr. Coleman's eyes. I would not let that happen to my house. My house would be a bulwark against that tide. A sanctuary. Allison Chin stopped writing. She looked at me, and for the first time, her professional mask slipped. She smiled. A small, genuine smile. That's a wonderful idea, Mr. Murray, she said. A legacy trust. Yes, we can absolutely do that. It's complex, but it's powerful. We can set up a board to administer it. Perhaps a member of your church, a local community leader. We talked for another hour. We talked about the legal structures, the tax implications, the wording of the charter. With every sentence, I felt lighter. I felt like I was building something again, not with wood and nails, but with words and laws. Something that would last. When we were done, she walked with me to the bank. The air outside was bright. The city felt different. I felt different in it. I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. At the bank, the process was exactly as she'd said. Simple. I signed a form. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, counted out the contents of my accounts in cash. It felt strange to hold that much money. It felt like holding my past. I deposited it all into a new account, an account with one name on it, Arthur Murray. I walked out of the bank with a new debit card and a book of new checks. I felt a sense of profound peace. It was not triumph. It was not anger. It was alignment. Like a well-planed board, my intentions and my actions were finally flush. The next few days were quiet. I spent them in my house, my home. I moved through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. This was not a temporary holding place. This was the headquarters of my new life. I made a list of repairs. Not the big ones Michael imagined, but small things I had let slide. A sticky window in the guest room. A dripping faucet in the bathroom. A loose board on the porch. I worked slowly, deliberately. The work felt good. My hands knew what to do. The call started on the third day. First, a text from Michael. Dad, try calling. Your voicemail is full. Call me. I read it. Then I deleted it. An hour later, a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let go to voicemail. The message was from Sarah. Her voice was tight, with controlled irritation. Arthur, it's Sarah. We received a very strange letter from an attorney. I think there's been some kind of mistake regarding the power of attorney. And the bank called Michael something about the accounts being closed. Obviously, there's some confusion. Please call us back as soon as you get this. We're worried. There was that word again. I deleted the voicemail. I went into my workshop and began the process of sorting my tools. I wasn't sorting them for Michael anymore. I was sorting them for the house. For the next person who might need to fix a dripping faucet or a loose board. I packed some of my father's more specialized tools, the ones for the lathe, into a wooden chest. I would donate them to the vocational school downtown. Let them be used by hands eager to learn. The next day, the calls became more frequent. Michael, Sarah, Michael again. Their tone shifted from confusion to frustration. Dad, what is going on? You can't just cut off communication. This is childish. Frank, listen to me. If this is about us wanting to sell the house, we can talk about it. But you're not equipped to handle your own finances. You're being manipulated. Is this about that lawyer? Did she put you up to this? They still didn't understand. They thought this was a negotiation, a tactic. They thought I was being emotional, irrational. They couldn't conceive that this was a rational, deliberate response to their own actions. My silence was a mirror, and they did not like the reflection. I did not reply. My silence was not a weapon. It was a boundary. It was the quiet, solid door I had closed on that part of my life. One afternoon, there was a tentative knock on the front door. Not the insistent banging of a stranger, but a soft, hesitant sound. I looked through the peephole. It was my granddaughter, Maya. She was 17. I hadn't seen her in person in 2 years. She stood on my porch, shifting her weight from foot to foot, clutching her phone in her hand. She looked like her father, but she had Helen's eyes. Kind eyes. I hesitated. She was her daughter, but she was also Maya. I opened the door. She looked startled, as if she hadn't expected me to answer. Grandpa, she said. Her voice was quiet. Hello, Maya. Can I come in? I stepped back and held the door open. She walked into the entryway and looked around, as if seeing the house for the first time. Mom and Dad are kind of freaking out, she said, not looking at me. They said you're not answering your phone. I've been busy, I said. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were searching. They said you fired them. I revoked the power of attorney, I corrected gently. And I put my money in my own bank account. It's my money, she nodded slowly. They're saying some lawyer is taking advantage of you. That you're not well. And what do you think? I asked. It was a direct question. I watched her wrestle with it. She could have defaulted to her parents' narrative. It would have been easier, but she didn't. She looked around the living room, at the record player, at my chair, at the photos on the mantelpiece. A photo of me in my army uniform. A photo of Helen and me on our wedding day. A photo of a tiny Michael sitting on my shoulders. I think, she said, her voice barely a whisper, that they haven't really been listening to you for a long time, and there it was. A simple truth, spoken aloud. It landed in the quiet room with the force of a thunderclap. I felt something in my chest unclench, a knot I hadn't even known was there. "I'm making coffee," I said. "Would you like a cup?" "I don't really drink coffee," she said. "I have tea," I offered. "Or lemonade." "Lemonade would be great," she said, and she smiled. It was a real smile. It reached her eyes, Helen's eyes. We sat at the kitchen table. I drank my coffee. She drank her lemonade. She didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter. She was comfortable in it. Like me, she asked me about the photographs. I told her the stories behind them. I told her about my father, Frank, and how he met my mother. I told her about building the deck, and how her grandmother had directed the whole operation from a lawn chair, like a general. I told her things I hadn't told anyone in years. Things Michael had never asked. She listened. She asked questions. She saw me. "Why are they so mad about the house?" she asked after a while. "They don't see a home," I said. "They see a number in a bank account. They see a problem to be managed. It's a beautiful home," she said, looking at the worn, familiar kitchen. "It feels safe." There was that word again. Safe. But when she said it, it meant something different. It meant comfort. It meant peace. Before she left, she gave me a hug. It wasn't the quick, obligatory pat of her father. It was a real hug. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she said into my shoulder, "for how they've been." "It's not right. It's all right, Maya," I said. "I'm all right," and I was. A week later, the final confrontation came. I knew it would. A black rental car pulled into my driveway. Michael and Sarah got out. They marched up the walkway with the determined stride of people on a mission. I was ready. I had spent the morning in the garden, pulling weeds. My hands were stained with honest dirt. I met them at the door. I didn't open the screen. We spoke through the mesh. It felt appropriate. A barrier. "Dad, open the door," Michael said. His face was flushed. "I can hear you just fine from here, Michael. What in the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "We had to fly all the way back here. Do you have any idea how much we have going on at work?" His concern, as always, was for his own inconvenience. "This is not a game, Frank." Sarah chimed in, her voice sharp. "Your daughter-in-law, a lawyer, looked into this, Allison Chun. She's some kind of activist. She's clearly manipulating you, preying on an old man." "My name is Arthur," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through their anger like a cold chisel through soft pine. They both stopped. They stared at me. "My name," I repeated, "is Arthur, and I am not an old man to be managed. I am your father." I let that hang in the air between us. "Ms. Chun is my legal counsel," I continued, my voice steady. "She has helped me execute my wishes. Wishes that I have formed of my own free will, based on my own clear judgment." Michael shook his head, a look of disbelief on his face. "Wishes? What wishes? To throw away your entire life savings? To give away the house? It is not your savings, Michael. It is mine, and I am not giving the house away. I am putting it to its proper use, and what is that?" Sarah asked, her arms crossed. "To spite your own family?" I looked at them, at their angry, confused faces, and I felt a deep, profound sadness. Not for me, for them, for their blindness. "This house," I said slowly, "is the product of my father's dream and my life's work. It is a symbol of security and community. It was never meant to be a cash prize for children who can't remember their own father's name." The words landed. I saw in the way Michael flinched, the way Sarah's mouth tightened. "I am placing this house in a trust," I told them. "It will provide affordable housing for an elderly person from this community. It will be a legacy of care, not of cash. My will has been changed. The trust is the sole beneficiary of my estate." Silence. A thick, stunned silence. The sound of a car passing on the street seemed unnaturally loud. Michael just stared at me. You can't do that. It's already done," I said. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes then. Not just anger. Panic. The realization that the resource he had been counting on, managing, and taking from was well and truly gone. "After all I've done for you," he said, his voice cracking. "What have you done, Michael?" I asked. It was a genuine question. "You have visited me twice a year. You have called me by the wrong name. You have taken money from my account without my full consent. You have tried to put me in a home. What you have done, son, is show me exactly what I mean to you. You have shown me that I am a problem to be solved. An asset to be liquidated. That's not true," he whispered. But there was no conviction in it. "Isn't it?" I said. "I am your father, and you have made me feel invisible. You have made me feel like a ghost in my own life. Well, I am not a ghost. I am a man. And this is my house." I put my hand on the doorknob. "This conversation is over," I said. "You're no longer welcome here today, Dad. Wait." I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, and I turned the deadbolt. The click was a final, satisfying sound. I stood there for a long time, listening. I heard their voices, muffled and angry, through the door. Then, the sound of them walking away. The car door slamming. The engine starting, too loud, too fast. The squeal of tires as they pulled out of my driveway. Then, silence again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a battle won. No, not one. A battle ended. A battle I had simply refused to fight any longer. I walked back to my kitchen. The sun was streaming through the window. I felt clean. I felt steady. I felt whole. I picked up the phone and called Allison Chun. "It's done," I said. "Are you all right, Arthur?" she asked. "I am," I said. And I was. Let's proceed with the transfer of the deed. The following weeks were a flurry of quiet activity. Paperwork was signed. The trust was officially established. I named it the Helen and Frank Murray Community Trust, honoring both my wife's compassion and my father's dream. Ms. Chun helped me appoint a small, trustworthy board. My pastor, Reverend James, my old friend Elias from the barber shop, and a retired social worker from our neighborhood association. They understood the mission immediately. They embraced it. I began preparing the house. I fixed everything on my list. I painted the trim. I polished the floors until they shone. I wasn't just cleaning a house. I was curating a home. I was making it ready for its next chapter, its next resident. I decided to be the trust's first resident. It made sense. I would pay a fair, affordable rent to the trust, which would fund its own upkeep. I was no longer an owner. I was a steward. The change was subtle, but it felt profound. It was a relief. The weight of ownership was gone, replaced by the dignity of stewardship. Maya texted me every few days. "Thinking of you, Grandpa. Hope you're okay." I would text her back. "I'm more than okay, Maya. I am well." We made a plan for her to visit for a week in the summer. On her own. She wanted me to teach her how to use the hand plane. 1 month after my confrontation with Michael, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It was from him. I recognized his impatient scrawl. I sat on the kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. I did not feel anger. I did not feel triumph. I felt a quiet curiosity. I made my coffee. I sat down. I opened the letter. It was long, pages and pages. He wrote about his childhood. He wrote about things I thought he had forgotten. He wrote that my silence had been the loudest thing he had ever heard. He wrote that he had looked up the meaning of the word equity and found that it meant not just value, but also fairness and justice. He wrote, "I have failed in both meanings of the word. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can. But I wanted you to know that I finally heard you. I am sorry, Dad." He used the right name. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. I did not reply. Not yet. Forgiveness, like a sturdy house, needs a solid foundation. We didn't have one yet. But for the first time, I could see the possibility of laying one. Stone by stone. I left the letter on the table. I went to my workshop. There was a project I'd been meaning to start. A small, simple bookshelf. Not for anyone else. Just for me. For the books I loved, I selected a piece of fine-grained cherry wood. I ran my hand over its smooth, cool surface. I picked up my father's old block plane. It felt good in my hand. Familiar. Solid. I set the plane to take the thinnest of shavings. I drew it across the edge of the board. A perfect, fragrant curl of wood spiraled up. The sound was a soft, satisfying whisper. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my workbench. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into the evening. The sound of children playing down the street. The smell of someone's barbecue. The distant, rhythmic ticking of a sprinkler. The neighborhood was changing, and I was home.